create a 3D object, terrain. You're seeing here, the terrain is created. By default, it's 1000 cross 1000 size. It has zero height, as you can see. This is a basic terrain, utility terrain. Now in here, I would be guiding you through all the options available here and what the functions of this option are. So first of all, this is the create neighbor terrains. So what it does is that you say, let's say you want to create a whole city. So only this much area won't work, won't suffice, I guess. So what you can do is you can create a single terrain, and then adjoining to it, you can add more number of terrains. Let me show you. See these grids are forming. Just click on these grids, and new terrains are created. Any number of terrains. This necessarily won't copy the same thing that you have in one to other. You have to do it on your own. Else, what you can do is, let's say you have made a mountain here. Let's say you have made in a mountain here. That doesn't end here. So when you create a new terrain here, the mountain map, height map of the mountain, height map just tells that at what height is the current pixel. That would be copied down to this value. Let me show you first. You'll get what I'm trying to say in a while. Let's work with a single sheet now. Now the next is the most important, paint texture. Here we have these 6 options, and these would be the things that you would work on the most in a terrain. The first and foremost thing that you need to do in a terrain, before raising or lowering the terrain, before painting walls, before painting texture, is to set height. So what it does is, let's say if I don't set this height, currently it's set to 0, right? If I don't set this height and just start raising and lowering terrain. Now let me first tell you what raising and lowering terrain is. So these are the brushes available. You see, these are the brushes available. So when you move the brushes, let me zoom in so that you can see clearly. Let me increase the brush size so it's clearly visible. You can see bump is being created. All of you are able to see this, right? Can anyone of you respond? Hello? Hello? Is my voice audible?
Yes.
Right. So one of you please respond so that I get that you're following. So you can see the terrain is getting raised, right? But the height has not been set. It's set to 0 currently. So what happens is, for raising the terrain, we just need to move it, set the opacity to the least, so as to create a good terrain. Let's say if you increase the opacity, you see its effect is getting larger. But the best I would advise is to keep the opacity nearly 5 or 10, so as to create a well-featured terrain. If you hold the shift button and then you move your mouse, then the height would get lowered. That is, depth is getting created. But you see, it's not getting, when I create the depth, it's not going inside, right? You're seeing this. It's just staying the maximum to the level of the terrain that we created. Holding the shift, it is not going inside. It's just getting flattened. That is why setting the height of the terrain is a must. So the first and foremost thing that you need to do is to set height. Let's say set height to 10 meters or 20 meters. If you want to make a deep ditch in your terrain, set it to 50. For now, I'm setting it to 10. Now, see what the difference it creates. Select the razor tool in lower terrain. Currently, you can choose any of the brushes. So see, it will. Now when I press shift and then move it again. See, being deeper than the level of the terrain itself. Right? You can see what am I trying to say. In the previous case, it went the maximum at the terrain level, but now it's getting 10 meters inside. That's why the most important thing was to do is to set height as per your choice. Now let me create a basic terrain so as we can paint it later. Let's create some mountains in here. Let's say I've created a basic terrain. Now, currently it's not at all looking realistic. So what we need to do is we need to add textures. So the most important thing, also other options as well. Let me explain you. So smooth height again uses a brush. It just helps you to smooth the edges if you want. If you have any sharp edges in your terrain, it just smoothens those height and averages them so that the terrain doesn't have sharp features. Paint holes. Paint holes is that let's say you don't want your terrain to be square, you want it to be circle. So what you can do is you can just remove that part of the terrain. Right, you can see. Now we don't need it. Now we need to paint texture. Paint texture as if we want some areas to be grass, some areas to be sand, some areas to be mountains, cliffs. So we need them to look like that. For that, what I want you to do is go to the asset store. Not right now. Just follow me. You can do it at afterwards. When you open the asset store, search for Unity standard assets. You will see this at the first. Standard assets for Unity 2018.4. Just go and purchase this. Purchase this in the sense it's free. Just download this from the asset store. I have it already downloaded, so I just need to import this. It's around 183 MB. We would be getting all the textures for the grasses, the trees that we'll be using in this terrain from here. Let me import this. You can choose which all assets do you want. For now, I'm selecting all and importing them into my file. The standard assets also contain some other assets as well, such as an airplane, an FPS controller. You don't need to every time code an FPS controller if you are not majorly focusing on that part of the game. You can just include the script and the assets from in standard assets as well. It also contains some water shaders, some 3D characters, cars as well. You can use it for different purposes. It's taking much time since it's a big file. It's done now. So you can see here in the assets, standard assets folder has been created. It contains 2D, cameras, characters, cross platforms, anything that you want in your game. It also contains fonts, particle systems, physics manager, prototyping, many things. Currently, we'll be using it for adding textures. Also, whenever you import this standard asset, you would see an error while you clear the game. Like whenever that error would pop out, I would tell you how to fix that error. Currently, it's not showing any error, so let's move further. So terrain, paint texture, select the paint texture option. Now, since no texture has been found yet, So we go on edit create layer, edit terrain layers, select the option create layer. Now you can see from the standard assets, we have this variety of textures that we can choose from. For now, let's say we want our default it to be a ground. So let's search for the ground texture. Grass will be ground texture. Okay, no ground, yeah, grass will. So just double click it. You would see the whole terrain has been colored. You see, it's pretty bland. It's like no textures at all. Only a blank color with no effect. So for that, select this. Now you would see the new layer. If it's not showing, just click on this arrow. Normal map, right? So now select a normal map for this. What the normal map basically does is, it adds the texture. For example, since we have selected the ground, so we need a texture related to ground. So we also have that as well. There, let's select this. Now just notice the difference previously and now. Like you're seeing, it was pretty blank before, but now it shows a kind of grid, right? The textures. Now you can also control the normal map scale from here. Let me remove this first. This paintbrush, let me reduce its size so that it no. Now what if I set the normal scale to say 2? The effect is more pronounced. Let's say move it to 5. You can see a rubbed kind of texture is coming. For time being, let's set it to 1 since we want a smooth texture. You can adjust the metallicness or the smoothness from here. You can set the tiling settings. More number of tiles per unit area. If you set it to 1 cross 1, you would get more detail, but it would also take more render time. If you set it to 5 cross 5, it would be more optimal, but it would not look nice. So according to me, 2 cross 2 works fine for this texture. Now, just don't want it to be a plain ground, right? We want some more textures like the cliffs, the roads, the sands. So what we're going to do, we need to add more textures in here. How will we do that? Again, go to edit terrain layers, create layer. Now, let's say we want to add sand. So this is the grass, rocky grass, not sand, rocky grass. Again, select this. You see now, these are being created here. You can also store them in a separate folder for proper organization. Again, select this, add a normal map to this too for the effect. Then select the same normal map that we used, since both are the grass types. Now you can reduce the opacity here if you want scarce patches. If you want clear patches, then you can surely get the opacity high. For now, I'm increasing my brush size to 100, opacity to 5. You see, the area that I'm painting is getting replaced by the other texture. Let's make this whole area a bit less grass here. Now basically you get an idea, and if I say increase the opacity of this ground, you can see more pronounced effect. Now let's say add cliff effect. Again, edit terrain layers, create a new layer, select the cliff texture. We have 3-4 textures. You say cliff albedo specular from here. Select this. Again, add the normal map. Now since we want it to be more rocky, we don't want it to be as smooth as the grass, so we will choose the cliff noise normal map. It would have more effect. Are these textures included in the package? Yes, yes, all these textures are from the package itself. That's why I told you to import that. Now again, we got the paint brush now. Select this texture. Now let's see what the effect it has. Zoom in to see its effect. You're seeing that it's a bit rocky type, but it's not exactly what we want. So let's change the normal scale and play with it to see what suits best. The tiling here, I guess they require a bit lower tiling. Now you can see it's much better, looking much better. We can reduce the opacity so as to give the edges smoothness. You can play with this. You can add more textures, more number of textures you want. For now, I'm just fine with 3. Add some rocky textures as well in here. All that are included in standard assets. There are more such assets you can find on the Unity Asset Store. I would be telling you the names if you want. Then after the terrain, this part is done. Now let's move on to the paint trees. Before that, let's go to the paint details. The paint details basically helps you to paint the details on the terrain. The most obvious details that we require in a terrain is the grass. If you are making a forest. So now again, we have the brush here, the same as the paint texture, just that we have the option of editing details here, where you have 2 options: add grass texture and add detail mesh. So what is the difference between the two? The grass texture just takes a texture and renders it all over the terrain, like whichever area that you paint. But a detail mesh has a more pronounced effect. It is more realistic as compared to the texture grass, but it consumes a lot of render time. So most optimal way is to add a grass texture. Also, detail mesh is not included in the standard assets. You can get it from other free assets, but that would slow down your rendering process. Unless and until you don't want very high quality of graphics, you should go with grass texture. Now let's select grass. Okay, we have 3 or 4 grass types and we already used these 2. So let's go with this. Now you can set the minimum width height of the grass, the maximum width height. The values would be oscillating between these 2. The minimum width, the maximum width, the noise spread. Let it all as it is. Just you can change the healthy color to a bit darker side so as to give it more realistic effect, and the dry color as well to a bit darker, as the grass is not exactly green, what you see. And now you can set the brush size, the opacity, the target strength. Generally, what the target strength does it decides the density of the grasses. Please zoom in so that you can see the effect. Currently, let's set the brush size to 30. You see, the grasses are placed here. It's very dense right now, right? Also, you are seeing this that if I move further away from the grass doesn't render, it curls, it disappears kind of from the camera. So basically, Unity does this to save the render time. That's it. It doesn't use unnecessary space to load the scene. You can change this from in here, terrain settings. You can change the distance from which the details are observed. For example, let's say if I reduce this, then the distance from the camera to the detail till which it's rendered. If I increase this further, then however far do I go from this grass, it still renders. But it consumes system time. So let me set it to default 80. Similarly, for the trees that we would be creating in a while, the distance is 5000 since trees are more pronounced from a far off distance as well. But you see, it's getting disappeared if I move more than 80. Also the same for the tree distance, the billboard distance, tree length, that all you can adjust according to your system performance. Again, here is the wind settings for the grass, like how much wind do you want it to affect the grasses. Like whenever you hit play, you can see the grasses moving in the terrain. You can adjust the bending size. Let's leave it as it is for now at the default setting. Just focus on painting the details. Now I told you about target strength. Since it's high, let's move it very low. Now you will see the difference. You see the density of the grasses placed has reduced considerably. It's getting more sparse. But if I increase the target strength, you see it's very dense. Now also similarly you can play with the opacity. Opacity decides just the same way that text just decided that it more pronounced or subtle effect. Let's reduce the target strength, let's reduce the opacity. You see, more subtle effect of adding grasses. This way, the areas you want to. Also, you can add multiple grasses. Let's add another grass. Now, this time we won't change the color so that you can see the two different varieties of grasses. Let me select this one. We're seeing the another type of grasses that's being generated here. So you can use multiple level of details, but this would increase the system render time, as said before. So this is how you add grasses. Now these two parts are done. Now let's add some trees. So in the standard sets, you get 3 or 4 types of trees that you can do. Also, Unity does have a tree system that we don't generally use. We are happy enough with the inbuilt tree system that is included in the terrain system. So select this option, paint trees. Now again, we would select the trees that we want, add tree. Standard assets have these objects. So let me select, see this, broadleaf desktop, broadleaf mobile, coniferous, these 3 trees. Then let's see if it's more. No, only 3 trees are included, so let me select this one. Now, again the same thing, you can set the brush size, the tree density, the lower number of trees. Then the color variation in the trees, you can set it to 0.5, 0.6, like the different types of trees that would be created. You see, trees are being generated and the density is very high. Let me reduce this density. This way you can generate different types of trees in the terrain. Also you can vary the colors.
Okay, can we
Yes.
reduce that size of the can we reduce the size of the marker to like
Yes, yes. If you want only
no,
single,
I meant is that I want to if I suppose that if I want to place the trees in a line, so what will I do?
if you want to place trees in a line, then reduce the brush size.
Oh, like okay, okay, I got it.
Now, if you don't want this, let's say you don't want to work more on your trees, you just want it to be get placed on its own, like wherever you want the trees to cover the whole area. You just want a specific number of trees to cover the whole area. You don't want the hazel to place the trees manually, like you are too lazy, a gamer like me. Then you can do mass place trees. This option is the best feature I can say. In the Unity, you can select the number of trees in here, but remember that all the before settings would get removed. So do it at the start of the game itself. So let's say I want 5,000 trees in my whole terrain. And do I want to keep the existing trees or not? No, I don't want to keep the existing trees. You can keep the existing trees. For now, I don't want. I have selected which tree I would like to place on the whole terrain. Now, when I click the place, you see the whole terrain tree has been placed randomly over the whole terrain uniformly. You can see it's a quite nice effect, right? Else, if you want that, now you see the major problem of this. You don't want your trees to be inside the on the cliff or inside that pond if you want to make it as a pond. Then you have to do it manually. Else you can also do that with a vegetation fauna, but you can search on the net. There are some scripts to do that. But for now, let's just stick to manually placing trees or mass placing trees. So this was all about terrain system. Yes, I don't have anything much to add. Yes, okay.
Do we have an eraser type of tool like suppose
Yes, yes, yes. Suppose you misplace, so you can do what you can do is you can select this. Let's see if it's working. Increase brush size. So hit the control key and then move. The areas that you don't want will be erased. Hit the control key,
okay, okay.
and if you want it, don't hit the control. So this is all about terrain system, basic terrain stuff. So now let me show you one of my projects that I am currently working on. that
So how do we add water for the pond?
for the pond water that is not included in the tailing system, but that comes with the standard asset. Let me show you. Since you ask this, okay. Standard assets, environment. Go to environment. Go to water. Go to water 4. Go to prefabs. There are two types of water: water for advanced and water for simple.
So this is included in the package.
Is included in the package. It contains all the shaders. Actually, what you do is you don't basically do this in a simple 3D project. You do this in a HRD, HDRP 3D project. Yes. There you create shaders on your own. There you create shaders on your own. But in here, all the things that you require is included in the package itself.
So I wanted to ask that is there a particle system for that or just a shader?
Just a shader.
Okay.
Now it's showing some error component I can just do. Okay. Cannot be loaded. Why can't be loaded now? You can increase the size to let's say 10. Z to 10. Just adjust it. You get a water. For perfect water effects, you need to use the shaders. That would require much advanced level, but this would work fine as well when you hit play. Okay, so it's compiling errors. Component at index 2 could not be game. Game camera. What is component at index 2? Okay, camera. The error has not been popped yet. System hanged. Sorry for the inconvenience. Switch between the systems.